Web Daily Bible. Day 78, Judges, chapter 16. Samson went to Gaza and saw there a prostitute, and went in to her. The Gazites were told, "Samson is here." They surrounded him and laid wait for him all night in the gate of the city, and were quiet all the night, saying, "Wait until morning light, then we will kill him." Samson lay until midnight, then arose at midnight, and took hold of the doors of the gate of the city, with the 2 posts, and plucked them up, bar and all, and put them on his shoulders, and carried them up to the top of the mountain that is before Hebron. It came to pass afterward that he loved a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. The lords of the Philistines came up to her and said to her, "Entice him, and see in which his great strength lies, and by what means we may prevail against him, that we may bind him to afflict him, and we will each give you 1,100 pieces of silver." Delilah said to Samson, "Please tell me where your great strength lies, and what you might be bound to afflict you." Samson said to her, "If they bind me with 7 green cords that were never dried, then shall I become weak and be as another man." Then the lords of the Philistines brought up to her 7 green cords, which had not been dried, and she bound him with them. Now she had an ambush waiting in the inner room. She said to him, "The Philistines are on you, Samson." He broke the cords, as a flax thread is broken when it touches the fire. So his strength was not known. Delilah said to Samson, "Behold, you have mocked me and told me lies. Now please tell me how you might be bound." He said to her, "If they only bind me with new ropes with which no work has been done, then I will become weak and be as another man." So Delilah took new ropes and bound him with them, then said to him, "The Philistines are on you, Samson." The ambush was waiting in the inner room. He broke them off his arms like a thread. Delilah said to Samson, "Until now you have mocked me and told me lies. Tell me with what you might be bound." He said to her, "If you weave the 7 locks of my head with the fabric on the loom." She fastened it with the pin and said to him, "The Philistines are on you, Samson." He awakened out of his sleep and plucked away the pin of the beam and the fabric. She said to him, "How can you say, 'I love you,' when your heart is not with me? You have mocked me these 3 times, and have not told me where your great strength lies." When she pressed him daily with her words and urged him, his soul was troubled to death. He told her all his heart and said to her, "No razor has ever come on my head, for I have been a Nazirite to God from my mother's womb. If I am shaved, then my strength will go from me, and I will become weak and be like any other man." When Delilah saw that he had told her all his heart, she sent and called for the lords of the Philistines, saying, "Come up this once, for he has told me all his heart." Then the lords of the Philistines came up to her and brought the money in their hand. She made him sleep on her knees, and she called for a man and shaved off the 7 locks of his head. And she began to afflict him, and his strength went from him. She said, "The Philistines are upon you, Samson." He awoke out of his sleep and said, "I will go out as at other times and shake myself free." But he didn't know that the Lord had departed from him. The Philistines laid hold on him and put out his eyes, and they brought him down to Gaza and bound him with fetters of bronze, and he ground at the mill in the prison. However, the hair of his head began to grow again after he was shaved. the lords of the Philistines gathered together to offer a great sacrifice to Dagon their god, and to rejoice, for they said, "Our God has delivered Samson, our enemy, into our hand." When the people saw him, they praised their God, for they said, "Our God has delivered our enemy and the destroyer of our country, who has slain many of us, into our hand." When their hearts were merry, they said, "Call for Samson, that he may entertain us." They called for Samson out of the prison, and he performed before them. They set him between the pillars. And Samson said to the boy who held him by the hand, "Allow me to feel the pillars on which the house rests, that I may lean on them." Now the house was full of men and women, and all the lords of the Philistines were there, and there were on the roof about 3,000 men and women, who saw while Samson performed. Samson called to the Lord and said, "Lord God, remember me, please, and strengthen me, please, only this once, God, that I may be at once avenged of the Philistines for my 2 eyes." Samson took hold of the 2 middle pillars on which the house rested and leaned on them, the one with his right hand and the other with his left. Samson said, "Let me die with the Philistines." He bowed himself with all his might, and the house fell on the lords, and on all the people who were in it. So the dead that he killed at his death were more than those who he killed in his life. Then his brothers and all the house of his father came down and took him, and brought him up, and buried him between Zorah and Eshtaol, in the burial site of Manoah his father. He judged Israel 20 years. Chapter 17. There was a man of the hill country of Ephraim, whose name was Micah. He said to his mother, "The 1,100 pieces of silver that were taken from you, about which you uttered a curse, and also spoke it in my ears, behold, the silver is with me. I took it." His mother said, "May the Lord bless my son." He restored the 1,100 pieces of silver to his mother. Then his mother said, "I most certainly dedicate the silver to the Lord from my hand for my son, to make a carved image and a molten image. Now therefore I will restore it to you." When he restored the money to his mother took 200 pieces of silver and gave them to a silversmith, who made a carved image and a molten image out of it. It was in the house of Micah. The man Micah had a house of gods, and he made an ephod and teraphim, and consecrated one of his sons, who became his priest. In those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did that which was right in his own eyes. There was a young man out of Bethlehem, Judah, of the family of Judah, who was a Levite, and he lived there. The man departed out of the city, out of Bethlehem, Judah, to live where he could find a place, and he came to the hill country of Ephraim, to the house of Micah as he traveled. Micah said to him, "Where did you come from?" He said to him, "I am a Levite of Bethlehem, Judah, and I am looking for a place to live." Micah said to him, "Dwell with me, and be to me a father and a priest, and I will give you 10 pieces of silver per year, a suit of clothing, and your food." So the Levite went in. The Levite was content to dwell with the man, and the young man was to him as one of his sons. Micah consecrated the Levite, and the young man became his priest, and was in the house of Micah. Then Micah said, "Now I know that the Lord will do good to me, since I have a Levite as my priest." Chapter 18. In those days there was no king in Israel. In those days the tribe of the Danites sought an inheritance to dwell in, for to that day Their inheritance had not fallen to them among the tribes of Israel. The children of Dan sent 5 men of their family from their whole number, men of valor, from Zorah and from Eshtaol, to spy out the land and to search it. They said to them, "Go, explore the land." They came to the hill country of Ephraim, to the house of Micah, and lodged there. When they were by the house of Micah, they knew the voice of the young man the Levite. So they went over there and said to him, "Who brought you here? What do you do in this place? What do you have here?" He said to them, "Thus and thus has Micah dealt with me, and he has hired me, and I have become his priest." They said to him, "Please ask counsel of God, that we may know whether our way which we go shall be prosperous." The priest said to them, "Go in peace. Your way in which you go is before the Lord." Then the 5 men departed and came to Laish, and saw the people who were there, how they lived in safety, in the way of the Sidonians, quiet and secure. For there was no one in the land possessing authority that might put them to shame in anything, and they were far from the Sidonians, and had no dealings with anyone else. They came to their brothers at Zorah and Eshtaol, and their brothers asked them, "What do you say?" They said, "Arise, and let's go up against them, for we have seen the land, and behold, it is very good. Do you stand still? Don't be slothful to go and to enter in to possess the land. When you go, you will come to an unsuspecting people, and the land is large, for God has given it into your hand, a place where there is no lack of anything that is in the earth." The family of the Danites set out from Zorah and Eshtaol with 600 men armed with weapons of war. They went up and encamped in Kiriath Jearim in Judah. Therefore they call that place Mahane Dan to this day. Behold, it is behind Kiriath Jearim. They passed from there to the hill country of Ephraim, and came to the house of Micah. Then the 5 men who went to spy out the country of Laish answered and said to their brothers, "Do you know that there is in these houses an ephod, and teraphim, and a carved image, and a molten image? Now therefore consider what you have to do." They went over there and came to the house of the young Levite man, even to the house of Micah, and asked him how he was doing. The 600 men armed with their weapons of war, who were of the children of Dan, stood by the entrance of the gate. The 5 men who went to spy out the land went up and came in there and took the engraved image, the ephod, the teraphim, and the molten image, and the priest stood by the entrance of the gate with the 600 men armed with weapons of war. When these went into Micah's house and took the engraved image, the ephod, the teraphim, and the molten image, the priest said to them, "What are you doing?" They said to him, "Hold your peace, put your hand on your mouth, and go with us. Be a father and a priest to us. Is it better for you to be priest to the house of one man, or to be priest to a tribe and a family in Israel?" The priest's heart was glad, and he took the ephod, the teraphim, and the engraved image, and went with the people. So they turned and departed, and put the little ones, the livestock, and the goods before them. When they were a good way from the house of Micah, the men who were in the houses near Micah's house gathered together and overtook the children of Dan. As they called to the children of Dan, they turned their faces and said to Micah, "What ails you that you come with such a company?" He said, "You have taken away my gods which I made, and the priest, and have gone away. What more do I have? How can you ask me, what ails you?" The children of Dan said to him, "Don't let your voice be heard among us, lest angry fellows fall on you, and you lose your life with the lives of your household." The children of Dan went their way, and when Micah saw that they were too strong for him, he turned and went back to his house. They took that which Micah had made, and the priest whom he had, and came to Laish, to a people quiet and unsuspecting, and struck them with the edge of the sword. Then they burned the city with fire. There was no deliverer, because it was far from Sidon, and they had no dealings with anyone else, and it was in the valley that lies by Beth Rehob. They built the city and lived in it. They called the name of the city Dan, after the name of Dan their father, who was born to Israel. However, the name of the city used to be Laish. The children of Dan set up for themselves the engraved image, and Jonathan, the son of Gershom, the son of Moses, and his sons were priests to the tribe of the Danites until the day of the captivity of the land. So they set up for themselves Micah's engraved image which he made, and it remained all the time that God's house was in Shiloh.